Kriya first.
The gentlemen are to step up.
Actually, before we lower, we'll do Kriya, and then we'll lower.
Lower all the way.
Yeah, after we do the ribbon.
Okay.
With the
Straight down, gentlemen.
daughter here. Okay. Randy, let's call you forward and we will tear the ribbon free of ribbon out already. Okay, so what I want you to do is tear from the end. Yeah, and before you do so, you say this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Dayan Ha'emet. Say Adonai Lekach. Adonai Natan. Natan Adonai Lekach. Adonai Lekach. Lekach. Yehi Shem Adonai. Lord is given and the Lord is taken away. Please, we praise the name of the Lord forever and ever. Sara Yisonan, all Adonai Maxi Mixareti, Miro Ayapeto, the Altifani Pakakush, Medevachavo, Keburato Yasekla, Vitachat Kalabal, Sina Visohara, Lotirani Pachalaila, Nekesha Usyomam, Medeve Beotel Yalo, Mekedav Yashu, Sara Yim, Nikol Riva Minecha, Elecha, Lo Yigash, Necha Tabit, Shulamat Shayim Tirem, Yata Adonai Maxi, Elion Samtam Yonecha, Lo Tune Elecha Ram, Venegelo Yikra, Ohalecha. Vitamin Bala, Hidra Kappa, Delamana, Elabel, Tariq Shahu, Setamin Bekoto, Mimalo, Matiba, Mashami, Mama Almina, Almini, Tayabu, Shabia, Hatsotami, Bekomase, Mimala, Matiase, Omeda, Estinam, Lanu, Tazet, Sputnika, Kese, Taxibese, Sadi, Bekola, Vatsutami, Erhabana, Rachamim, Amala, Ukus, Al Avot Abani, Ubanim, Ilacha Dona Sisot Rachamim, Tadi Katadana, Lamil Chayot, Shariat Kol Ruchot, Alilecha Gizwan Richot, Yuna, and Echaberachamim Alain Bichot, Ilacha Adona Rachamim Haslichot, Am Ben Yichana Yeh, O Eleshana Yichye, Ma Yisron Lo, Kilo Hayah, O Ruch Kayan, Hamed, Bichayeh, Baruch כי אמת דינו משותיך קורבנו, משלם לאדם חשבונו מדינו, והכל לשמו הודיה איתנו ידענו. אדוני, כי צדק משפטיך, תצעק בדבריך, ותזכר פשוטיך, ואם להרהר, אחר בידת שופטיך, צדיק אתה, אדוני וישר, משפטיך. דיין אמת, שופט צדק ואמת, ברוך דיין אמת, שכל משפטיו צדק ואמת, אמת כוחך ידיך, צדק מלא ימינך, רחם אפריך, צאנה ידיך, ותאמר למלאך, ערך ידיך. גדול היית רב עלילה, אשר עניך בכוחות על כל גדלות ערכי בני אדם, לתת לאיש כדרכיו, כפרי מעליו, להגיד ישר אדוני צוי לבלת עבדת בו. אדוני נתן, ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. וברכו מחברו ולרשתי, ירבה להשיב בכל ירחו חמתו. The rock, his work, is perfect in all his ways are done. Faithful God is he, never falls, true and upright. The rock is perfect in every way, and who can question God about God's deeds? God rules below and on high, causing death and giving life, bringing down to the grave and raising up. The rock is perfect in every deed. Who can ask him, what are you doing? For his word is fulfillment. Graciously deal with us through the merit of Isaac, who was bound like a lamb. Hearken and fulfill. For the rock is just in all his ways. The rock is perfect, patient, and compassionate. Have pity for parents and children, as forgiveness and compassion are yours. For you are just, O Lord, in causing death and giving life to the dead. And in your hands are all souls. And far be it from you to blot out our remembrance. Consider us with mercy, for compassion and forgiveness are yours. Praised is he whose judgment is true, who discerns everything, who settles accounts of mortals, whom all acknowledge with praise. The soul of all life is in your hand, and your might is filled with justice. Wondrous in purpose and mighty indeed, you see the ways of all mortals, giving each according to his ways and the fruit of his deeds. Proclaim that Adonai is just. He is my rock, whom there is no flaw. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Praise be the name of the Lord. V'shava afar al haaretz keshayam, v'ruach tashuv Elohim asher nitana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Ida's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, O Lord, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. For you have given the gift of your spirit, and we are formed. And you take it in return, and we turn to dust. We now speak our gratitude for the many blessings in the life of Ida Kubrick, and we turn to you, seeking comfort and light. Compassionate one, grant us solace and strength, reinforce our faith, for you are our rock and redeemer. And let us say, Amen. We gather here this morning to share in sadness and also to celebrate, enjoy the life of Ida Kubrick, a loving grandmother, a loving mother, a loving mother-in-law, a loving wife, a loving daughter. We can celebrate her life in many ways, in the years that she walked on this earth, and she made contributions to the life of her family and to her community. She always had a smile on her face from the time that I first met her, and she always at least made it appear that nothing was wrong and that things were just okay. So we're going to have some of her family speak, beginning with her sister-in-law, son-in-law, Michael.
Grandma was the ultimate caregiver. It all started with her father, as she lost her mother at the age of 15. Her older brother and sister, Hank and Marcia, had already left home, so when her mother died, Ida became the homemaker of the house and took care of her father. When Zayd Shimi got cancer, she took care of him, making him comfortable. The care did not end there. Sometime after Zayd Shimi died, Grandma met and married Stan. Unfortunately, he developed prostate cancer, and she took care of him. She truly cared for others more than she cared for herself. She then enjoyed several happy years with her best friend's brother, Sid. He lived in Florida, and she enjoyed a jet-set romance in her 80s. She lived life to the fullest, and we should all be so lucky at that age. Along the way, she had a wonderful daughter, my wife, Randy. Everybody knows that Grandma was stubborn and pushy. While that may have created issues at home, on the work front it served her well. She was a substitute teacher, and the school district administration would assign her to the toughest schools when they needed a sub who could control a class. After that, she sold extended warranties for Sears, making cold calls to customers and pushing on something that they did not need. The fact she was successful is a testament to the insistent personality we all know and loved. And today we should not grieve Grandma, but celebrate her life. She lived to be 2 months shy of 92 years old. To think that she only suffered for 5 days of that life is a blessing. She lived the rest of her life to its fullest, experiencing the joy of raising her daughter, loving her 2 grandchildren, and celebrating visits with her great-grandchildren, Shayna and Dahlia. Thank you for being here. Yes, rather than grieve, we should all hope to celebrate his life as healthy and full of joy as Grandma had. Thank you.
Do you want to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And now, grandson Harris. Would you like to use some words?
This might sound very similar to my father. So thank you all for being here. This is very hilly. I think we all really appreciated the love and compassion that Grandma brought to this family. And the amount of interest she had in our development as grandchildren, and always wanting to know what was going on, and really just proud of everything that we became. And I think proud of the daughter that she raised, for raising 2, I think, well-adjusted kids despite the odds. And I think that's really saying something. A lot of people aren't equipped with the tools to be loving parents. And I think despite that, Grandma really raised a daughter that cared about her kids, I think, more than anything, and provided the guidance necessary to be relatively successful and well-adjusted. And so, I mean, I think when Tamima and myself and Dahlia and Shayna think about how they got here, it really is rooted in the people that came before us. And I think it's really important that we remember them, because all of our characteristics, all of our traits, good and bad, are really rooted in their experience and how they were raised. And so we want to continue and build on the good and confront the not so good, so we can be better for the generation after and the generation after. And I think that's really important to remember, especially for someone who is able to live so long and see those generations culminate into something that I think is really special. And I think I'm really looking forward to what Dahlia and Shayna grow up to be. And I think it's all based in who Grandma was and who my dad's parents, Bubby and Zeta, are. And so I appreciate and love Grandma for everything she did and everything she brought to this family. Because without her, we wouldn't be here today. So I love you, Grandma.
That's great.
Thanks so much, Harris. I want to call upon Randy, his daughter.
Unlike my son, who can speak so eloquently on the spot, I actually have some notes so that I don't forget what I want to say today. We are here to celebrate and not mourn 91 plus years of my mother's life. And I just want to share some thoughts and memories with you. For those that are here today who knew me growing up in my youth, you also knew that my mother could be very demanding and stubborn, which led to so many disagreements and battles between us. Compromise was not a word in her vocabulary. But as I grew older, we made our amends, and especially over the last 7.5 months since she was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, we did become close, enjoying our weekly visits, weekly Sunday visits, to just talk about our day, our week, or just maybe watch a TV show. And she always loved me bringing her milkshakes on every Sunday, because she certainly did love her ice cream and her sweets. One of my mother's strengths was always being able to step up during hard times, taking care of the ones she loved, is already alluded to by my husband, Mike. She took care of me when I was laid up for 5 months with a broken leg. And when I had a tutor come to the house to help me with my 8th grade homework, and she felt that she was not, in her words, well, in her words she said, "She's an idiot." And she took it upon herself to become my teacher, getting all of my schoolwork from school and making sure that I did that and beyond that, and extra work and extra credit work. She was a strong woman with strong opinions, and was not afraid to express them. After spending a few months in New York when I was 5 with my aunt, uncle, and cousins, because she was having some health issues, I returned back to Pittsburgh with a New York accent. And my kindergarten teacher had told her that I needed to have speech therapy. And she looked at her and said, "You're nuts." She also opened her home, no matter how small it was, to family members when they were in need of a place to stay. My aunt, when she was a teenager, stayed with my parents when her mother, my grandmother, had to go to New York to help out with her firstborn grandchild. And then my cousin's husband was stayed back in Pittsburgh to take his medical board exams, and lived with them for about a month. And I always took the couch when my grandmother came to visit, which was wonderful having her in the house for her visits. And she always insisted on paying for everything when she took people out. She would not allow you to pay for anything. And I even had to reimburse myself for those milkshakes that I bought every Sunday from her checking account. You know, just a few of the stories that I wanted to share in remembrance of my Mother's Day, to keep her memory alive in our hearts. And I just want to finish up with a modern version of a Woman of Valor that was written by Stacy Robinson, who was a member of the congregation Kapha in Glencoe, Illinois. She doesn't feel brave, except sometimes she does. She feels the weight of rubies and the gold twist on her fingers. She prefers a crown of flowers in her hair to cold meadow and the straight-edged lines of rocks. She doesn't feel brave, except when she does. In her heart, the heart of a wife and daughter, mother, perhaps, or not, childless by choice or unseen circumstances. Weaver of tales, spinner of fine linen that snags sometimes, and she smooths it with supple fingers, slim fingers, crooked and thick with age fingers. She pulls the thread that pulls the cloth. There is beauty in its folds. She doesn't feel brave, but she laughs, and it sounds like water and light, and she knows goodness and sometimes pain, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. She doesn't feel strong, but she rises when she falls, because there are bills to pay, and dinner to fix, and papers to grade, and sometimes write. There are knees to bandage and meetings to endure, and the clock keeps ticking. And there are friends to love, and family to love, and self to love. Yes, self to love, sometimes. She rises exhausted. She rises in joy. She rises trembling. She rises fearless. She rises bruised. She rises alone. She rises lonely. She rises. She knows nothing of valor or the value of rubies. She rises and does not feel strong, but sometimes she knows blessings and the stumbling bit of grace. Thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate it. You're one.
Thank you so much, Randy, for your beautiful words. And we're so grateful for your presence here, bringing your mother back to her hometown here in Pittsburgh. Randy, you are Ida's daughter. Your husband is her son-in-law, only son-in-law. It's quite a burden. And you had 2 children, Tamima and Harish, and Gary is another son-in-law, great son-in-law, and of course Shayna and Dahlia, who are here being very, very well behaved at their great-grandma's funeral. Very impressed. I remind people that donations in Ida's name can be made to the American Cancer Society or to the Susan G. Komen Foundation. When I think of Ida Kubrick, I think of someone who is always cheerful, who is always very well dressed, and who was always friendly, always inquisitive about how you were doing, how things were going for you, and always had questions, and always seemed to be at home in our New Light congregation with her friends, or at home at the JCC with the senior lunch group, or out with her husband or various boyfriends at the Pittsburgh Playhouse, at the opera, at her favorite restaurants, or playing Roomy Cube. I was even told that after, you told me his name was Shimmy, Shimmy's retirement, they were ushers at the Pirate Ballpark, and spent many a days, I can imagine Sundays when it was a little bit warmer than this, watching ball games with their favorite Pirate team. You know, I think about that idea of being an usher at the park, because I hope that if I'm in good condition at Shimmy's and Ida's age, that maybe I will be able to fulfill one day. I think it's a wonderful act of hospitality that the Pirates show towards their fans. You know, you get that kind of attention when you're at the opera or if you go to a show, but you don't expect that kind of attention when you go to the ballpark, where everybody is just shouting and screaming and doing cheers. But this was part of Ida's persona. She was a Jew through and through. And as you know, Jews are very good at showing hospitality. One of their #1 features. You wipe the seat down, you make sure that they check their tickets to see they're in the right place. And she did this in her personal life as well. She lived mainly in East Liberty, in Staten Heights. Before that, she lived in Squirrel Hill. Before that, she lived in Monroeville. She grew up in a small town called Farrell, Pennsylvania. But when she got to be an adult, she, whether it was in Staten Heights or even in her apartment at the University Square in Oakland, she always had an extra bed for a relative who needed to spend the night. And she would go to great extent to make sure that there was room, and whoever it was, could have been a distant relative or a close cousin, they had a place to stay with Ida. And as Randy said, You know, sometimes that meant in the old Stanton Heights home that Randy would have to sleep on the couch for the night and allow the guest to sleep in her bedroom. That's the kind of generous, hospitable person Ida was. But there was other ways that Ida was a Jew. Ida was someone who was not only generous and hospitable, she was also a person who was very social. A person who not only enjoyed playing the hostess at home for her family and friends, but also enjoyed going out. As Hirsch said, after her husband Shimmy passed away and she was briefly married to Stanley, she was with her best friend's brother, Sid, who lived in Florida. And she was a kind of jet setter in her 80s, going to and from Florida all the time during the time that they knew one another. Of course, if things weren't going well down in Florida, she would retreat back to Pittsburgh, to her Oakland apartment. But she loved men, she loved company, she didn't like to do without, so she would go down to Florida again. Another way that she was a Jew was that she was very independent person who wanted to take care of herself, and she enjoyed cooking and cleaning, and if guests came to the house to eat, she was in the kitchen, she did the serving, and she did not want any help. She was that independent. In her mind, she had a vision of the way the dinner was going to proceed, and that meant no one got up to help and no one got up to serve. It was this kind of independence, it would prove to be good for her, because you could always depend on her, and sometimes you didn't really have to worry too much about her aging. In fact, in the last days of her life, she did not want to go to the hospital because she thought she could take care of herself at home. She walked with a cane and a supporter, but would not be in a wheelchair. She denied that she had cancer, even though the doctors said that she did. And she asked again and again, I want to know the exact diagnosis. I want to know what is the exact diagnosis, because I don't think that I belong here. And eventually she was put into an assisted living home for only a week. And for 3 of those days, she was okay. And for the rest of those days, she did not do well. Eventually, she succumbed. I like to think of her in herself trying to bargain with God, because she was that kind of independent person that is a Jewish value. A person who can pick herself up, a person who can be a true servant of God, is someone who is to be praised. And it's interesting, in the Eshet Chayil, Woman of Valor poem that Randy read, you could see there was a couple of differences in the translation, saying, she could, she would make do with problems, and she would make do with not having enough courage. And Ida would not let you see that. She would not let you see that she was scared. She would not let you see that there were problems. She insisted that she was going to be a human being until the end. And that's exactly what her family provided for her in the end. Just as she had barked orders to her family in her younger days for them to make sure that their bedrooms and rooms were clean, and to tell Randy to go back every single week to make sure her room was clean down to the dust on the baseboards. You can still hear Grandma saying, do I really need to do this? Is this really correct? Is this really the exact diagnosis? You know, I'd like to get a second opinion. I was hoping that Yetta Spicer could be here today, but she's also around Ida's age and a little too cold for her to come out today. But she and her are really very, very good friends. And of course, I remember the days that she would come with Ida and Sid, who was her brother, and they came every Friday night when I first started as the rabbi at New Light. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is, I don't want to miss this, is in addition to being independent, in addition to being a good person who was hospitable to all people, she was also an excellent caregiver. I think that in another life she could have been a nurse. She loved taking care of her husband, Shimmy. She loved taking care of Stanley, who was briefly ill, correct?
Yeah.
And she moved to Florida to take care of Sid. She was always concerned about your health, and she would do everything to make sure that you got the proper comfort. We will miss many things about Ida in her life. The 6 p.m. calls or visits on Sundays. The meticulousness that she had. We will miss her clothing. She was a big shopper and kept the women's clothing business, Blair's, in business. And many of the clothes in her closet she never wore, but she liked to have a rainbow of the clothing for jackets and sweaters, and she loved suits and outfits, and she loved to be well dressed and to look good. We will miss so many things about her smile, about her presence in the life of her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. We will miss, we'll even miss some of the arguments we used to have with Grandma. Of course, you never could win. But with all these blessings, you know, I come to think of her as a wonderful Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor who was an independent force, who taught values of hospitality and caregiving, who taught why it's important to be independent. Zichronah Livracha, may her memory be a blessing. Amen.
Thank you.
So we're going to use this short ceremony of Kavura. It's a ceremony that's defined by our tradition as helping with the burial. A lot of people say, well, this looks like throwing the dirt in the deceased's face. But in fact, it is called a Hesed a magic, beautiful, loving kindness that we can do for the people that we love. Much of life is built up with reciprocity in our relationships. We were born, we were clean, we were fed, we were taken care of, and we reciprocate, and we show that care when our mothers and fathers get older, and that we can feed, and wash, and clothe them. But the last gesture that we can show someone that we love is by providing them with a proper burial, because this is an action that the deceased cannot reciprocate. So what we do, hopefully the rain will let up, is we take the back end of the shovel and we put a little bit of earth into the grave, and then take 2 more shovels of earth, and that completes the custom, and we put it back into the grave. We have 2 shovels here, and we start with Randy and Mike, and everyone else makes this way as well. No.
And the reason you do it upside down, what Rabbi told us yesterday, is that you don't want to bury so fast. Bye, Ida.
Anyone else? El Melech Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Ametzei Minuchana Tachat Kanfei Ashkina Bimalo Kiroshim Utarim Zoa Haraki Hamasirim Enishmad Ida Bad Binyamin Shehalcha Leolamam Began Eden Tehe Menuchatam Ana Bal Harachamim Hasireha B'Tzeter Kanafecha Leolamim Atzor b'tzoro hachayim et nishmota v'Adonai hu nachalata v'tanoach b'shalom al mishkava v'namah amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy pure to the soul of Ida Bas Binyamin, merciful one, Bal Harachamim. We ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Hallowed and enhanced may God be throughout the created world. May God's sovereignty soon be accepted during our own life and the life of all Israel. We say Amen. We say the mourners come. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yamadi Ra, Kuete, Yamlich Malchute, Yechayechon, Yomechon, Uchaye, Lechoveit Yisrael, Vagalam, Zman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Umeo Mayab Yiparach Yishabach Bar V'Traman V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitalev V'Yitalal Shmei Kucha B'Richu Leolam Minkol Birchata V'Shirata V'Shbechata V'Lechemata Yamiram V'Yama V'Yimru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya L'chaim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael Yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimramav Uya Aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael Yimru Amen. Okay, that concludes the service for this morning. And what we'll do now is, Randy is the primary mourner. So if we were to create like two double lines here facing one another, so she can walk through them. And hold on. Just get someone over here. Stand right over here. We're just sort of like two lines to face one another. Okay. All right. And as Mike and Randy return to their cars, we say this. It's a statement that we make to mourners upon going into Shiva, which is for the next 7 days, and then and a year of mourning. We say the words, you can repeat after me. Hamakom Yinachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avele Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May God grant you comfort in the gates of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.